Oh, you know what I love?
Sports.
Love sports.
Sports. When
It comes to Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
Let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
TexAgs Live.
I feel like I should be listening to the theme song from the Jeffersons. You know, we're moving on up.
We will develop men, we will graduate players, and we will win championships on the field.
The best way for us to win is to do it together.
He is a guy that has gotten better and better and better. He's just got that dog in him.
It's been special. The 12th man this past week was unbelievable.
And this is a real program. It's not fake. This is a real place. And if you want to be really good at football, this is a really good place to be.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies.
Buchanan.
Nuño.
Look, today's a good day.
It is a good day.
Couple things.
Tell me what.
Baseball team dominates yesterday, as expected.
As expected.
Okay, just PV, but I'll take it right now. 14-0. They run rule them 7 innings. Basketball, we'll find out who they'll play here in how many? When does Texas and Vandy play?
1:30. So
1:30.
I think 1:30.
So
no,
right
2:30.
So right when you're taking off for Nashville, they'll be starting that game. Or
I think they're starting at 2:30 and we're taking off at 1:30.
Okay.
I think I got that right.
And then when you land, you'll hopefully know close to who they'll be playing. You're leaving with Luke Evangelist, and you'll be heading to Nashville for what I think could be a revenge game. It is a revenge.
Well, yeah. Either way,
you got to right those wrongs.
And you're better than both of those teams. I think they obviously blew one in Austin. You know, had the big lead, and I just think they weren't playing well against Vanderbilt. And still should have won the game, but they seem to be back on their game. They've beaten number one Auburn, and then followed that up with an impressive win on the road against LSU. So they're going into that SEC tournament with some momentum.
A little bit of momentum.
Got to maintain it.
I'm glad you brought that up, OB.
Really?
Momentum. Because I know that's one of the things that Buzz talked about yesterday, about playing with momentum. And look, regardless of what happens tomorrow, if they win or lose this game, they have played the brand of basketball that got them to a top 10 ranking, the brand of basketball that we've come used to seeing from them, become accustomed to seeing. We kind of lost it a little bit during the losing streak. I mean, it was there, but it felt a step slow, like they were underwater doing it. They were not underwater against LSU defensively. They certainly weren't underwater against Auburn. No, in fact, against Auburn, they reminded themselves and everybody else how good they can be and that they can be elite. Now, we talked about it yesterday. Against LSU, they were absolutely dominant and elite for about 32 of the 40 minutes. Yeah. There was 8 minutes when they were bad. They were very bad. But they absolutely dominated the game for the rest of that time. Yeah, they certainly did. So let's listen to Buzz talking about this opportunity because it's different. Before we listen to him, it's different for A&M. Yeah. The last few years, they have been a team that had to go hunting, right? They weren't sure what their postseason life was going to look like. They are firmly in. They are a top 4 seed right now, right? Hopefully a 3 seed. I'd like, Luke basically told us yesterday it's almost impossible for them to get to a 2 seed. That being said, they're likely a 3 or 4 seed. Years past, you weren't even really sure if they were going to get in. Last year, even though they were, a 9 seed, 8 seed last year? Was it that low? 8 seed? I guess it was because they did play Nebraska number 1, 9. So they would have been 8 seed. In fact, last year at this time, Buzz was speculating that they had to win the tournament to get in. Well, that didn't. That proved not to be the case, but that's how they felt. Now, 2 years ago, they were firmly in. In fact, remember, we were surprised that they were only a 7 seed. Yep. But, of course, the year before that, they didn't get in. They didn't get in even though they went to the final and beat a couple of ranked teams along the way. So, completely different, I guess what I'm trying to say, they don't have to have as much angst going in. Right. They can be a little more relaxed, even though buses are not relaxed. But they shouldn't be relaxed because they play their best when they're not relaxed. That's true. But the point is they can be relaxed in terms of
they know they're in the tournament.
Right.
You have that security. Hopefully you play with the same sense of urgency regardless.
Yep.
But in those 2 of the last 3 years, they had to play with a desperation. That's not the case this year.
Well, let's listen to Buzz yesterday, who's not taking this moment. Grant, he's not going to take it. He's. I can't even speak English anymore.
He's not going to take it for granted?
He's not going to take it for granted, Obie. Here's Buzz.
I don't take it for granted, any of this. And we have, over the last 4 years, I think we've played more games in the SEC tournament than any team in the league. I think we've won more games than any team in the SEC. But in truth, we probably had to in some of those scenarios. And so we have a group that has experience, successful experience, but it is different. But it's still the same opportunity. I think anytime you're a player or a coach to go through a 10-week season and then to be able to have a chance to win a championship, those don't come around very often. And so SEC regular season champion, SEC tournament championship, just like you're seeing on TV now, those are rarities. And so opportunities are scarce, and we want to make sure we give our absolute best.
And they have a chance. Look, I don't know if I'm predicting them to go through the SEC tournament and win it all, but I do like the matchup if it is Vandy and if it is Texas. And then, it would be Tennessee in the next round. Tennessee is a game where you did not play your best at the end, right? And you gave up. Their best player had a phenomenal game. Your best player did not.
Look, that's all true. The fact of the matter is you made 6 of 30 three-pointers in that game, and it was should have been a 1-point game, but it was a 3-point, possession game with 30 seconds to go. So
don't shoot 30 and make more than 6.
I don't think anybody is going to go if they get past Vanderbilt or Texas, which I think they will. I don't think anybody's going to go into that Tennessee game thinking, okay, this is when we don't have much of a chance to win. No, they're going to feel very confident, as well they should. Yeah,
they absolutely should. So this morning when I woke up, I was doing my typical prep, kind of reading the stories out there, and we'll transition to football for a moment. Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman?
Wasserman,
Yep, from On3. They have a podcast, and today was about an hour on A&M. Okay, and I listened to as much of it as I could. Here's one of the takeaways. Ari said A&M is one of the hardest teams to project quite usually. Like, he thinks they're very hard because they have the talent, but they have been in transition. Even during the Jimbo era, they've had drama at the program. So he says they're one of these hard teams to kind of pinpoint because the resources are there, but there's always something that sets them back a little bit. And he does like the Elko hire. He thinks year one was a step in the right direction. And both Andy and Ari talked about how year two could really set this team up in a positive direction or a negative direction. And that 8-4 would actually be a good thing, which I don't agree with, because it would disrupt many other programs trying to vie for a championship.
So it's good if you're 8-4 because somebody else didn't win a championship, but you didn't win one.
Right.
My take on it. 10-win seasons should always be
the standard,
the goal or the standard, the expectation. And by the way, I know it's only March, but to say you'll accept 8 wins now, you understand projecting to 2026, you're going to have a completely rebuilt offensive line. You're going to lose. You're still going to have running backs, but you're going to lose an all conference.
Yep.
You may not have the same receivers. I
don't know if they're predicting 8-4. I think what they're saying is they're so hard to project, and I think Vegas
they said it would be a good thing.
Well, it could be a good thing in disrupting other people's seasons. To me, everybody's has the number 7.5 wins for A&M. That's the number.
Right, I know. As someone who follows A&M, and I think everybody is going to agree with this, you want to be much more than a spoiler.
Yes.
And if the national media feels like the best you can do is be a spoiler, that's disturbing to me. I don't want to just mess up somebody else's season. I want to step on their skull on the way to winning a championship.
So when we try to project this team, the same questions keep coming up, right? The defensive line and the secondary.
Right.
And then on the offensive side, I guess, is it Marcel Reed's growth, even though you're very happy with him?
I'm very high. No, I'm expecting growth. All the things I say about Marcel, I'm all in on Marcel. I think he is going to be a star quarterback. It's all with I'm assuming that he's going to take the next step, because I think when you are a backup quarterback thrust into an offense that was never tailored to you, I don't expect massive changes, but there will be some massaging to do to the offense, I would think, to take full advantage. Of his complete skill set.
Yep.
So I think just more repetitions as the starter from day one. Then he starts finding that open receiver that he missed against Texas, or learns from when's the right time to run or to try that long pass, or just to throw the ball into the stands, right? So I just think that there's a natural progression that I'm expecting him to take, but because of the running threat he provides, as well as it's not like he was he was an incompetent passer.
Right.
He just needs to get better.
I think when people talk about his turnovers, the big problem with the turnovers last year, where I think there were such inopportune turnovers. It's not that they're all bad,
right?
But like the South Carolina game kept the game that would have been close to a blowout, right?
Yeah.
The USC first turnover was bad because momentum. The second one wasn't his fault.
Wasn't even on him. Should have been a touchdown pass.
Yes. Had it not bounced off Noah Thomas's helmet, A&M wins that game before it goes to OT.
If Noah Thomas catches it.
Right.
A very catchable ball.
Yeah.
That you're supposed to do if you're a number one, or really is anything. There was an interception, I think, against Texas that was frustrating. Definitely Auburn, frustrating. Sometimes they're not on the quarterback. Sometimes did somebody run the route wrong? Did somebody quit on a route or whatever? But it still goes out on the quarterback. But he's got to be better. But again, I'm basing it as a passer. I'm sold on him as a runner. So is that poor guy that got faked out of his shoes at Florida, and LSU for that matter, several. But I'm basing it on, I believe that when you're the quarterback from day one of spring and day one of August camp, and then the starter, and you're taking all the starting reps and you're putting more of the focus is on you, I expect that you will get all those extra reps, that extra attention will mean that you will be a better passer.
How much growth can you see, and I don't know if expect's the right way to phrase it, from a coach? So I'm not even talking Elko here.
You're talking about Colin Klein.
I'm talking Colin Klein because, I know you were not a big DJ Durkin fan. I know, but he had a much better second year than he had first year. Second year, now Adazio did not have a great second year. Okay, so how much can we? And I think Colin Klein had there were some issues this year with some play calling, especially in fourth and short, but also kind of a lot of wrinkles were thrown his way with quarterback changes, running back changes. So how much can we see from Colin Klein in year two?
That'd be interesting. I don't know. I don't know him well enough to say whether he's a Jimbo-like coach. That I've got my system. This is what I do. I don't care what else is happening. This is my tried and true system. It worked for me in the ACC. In this case, it worked for me in the Big 12, so it's got to work for me in the SEC. And it doesn't matter who the quarterback is or what's this. Well, I don't know if he's that stubborn like that.
Right.
I hope to see him get real creative. And there were times last year I'd say, oh, now I like that.
Yeah.
Now, where is it more of that? But just think about this. How many more wins would A&M have if you could have gone into a game and you could say, on third or fourth and one, I know they're going to pick it up. You can't stop them.
It felt in the beginning of the year they were getting those.
Really against Notre Dame?
Not against Notre Dame, no. How about
we can't get any more beginning than the first game.
Well, this is true. During the 7-game win streak, it felt like they were picking it up. Once they figured out, once Le'Veon got going, he got
always
going.
on the line. Sometimes it was because you had fourth and one or third and one, and a receiver who's not even involved in the play jumps.
Yeah.
It's all those things. It's discipline. It's how It's attitude. It's the call.
In a close game and in a season of what ifs, there's all these little micro. God, if you just make that tackle against the Lenore Sellers, if you just pick up that 4th and inches and don't jump off sides, but that's what teams that don't win do. They have a lot of those micro moments that had you just got 1 or 2 of them, it changes the entire trajectory of the season.
Yes, but when it's been a consistent area of failure, like in short yardage, then it's not just it's just 1 or 2 things.
Right.
This was a problem.
Yep. Do you think that people think they're watching the Lifetime Network?
Oh no, they know we're complaining about Aggie football. They know
we should
this
tell them
is
what
the
this
Go
is.
Hour on TexAgs Live.
TexAgs Live presented by
TexAgs Live?
Yeah, the show.
The whole show?
The entire show.
You mean David Gardner?
David Gardner's Jewelers, yeah. That's
Gem
right.
of a guy.
And this new beautiful studio is?
Oh, Rollo Insurance Studio.
Yeah.
The beautiful Rollo Insurance
The beautiful
Studio.
Rollo Insurance Studio. This particular hour, you named it a moment ago.
Yes, the Go Hour.
Okay, that's presented by?
CC Creation. See, I haven't lost it yet.
Yeah, well, you have. And this area right here.
The Cool Zone, brought to you by Holistic Planning. The Holistic Planning Cool Zone, it's the paint.
What do they do there?
Oh, they do all kinds of things, all kinds of cool things like your investments, cool, making money. Nothing's more cooler than making money. Taxes, nothing's cooler than being able to keep as much of that money you make away from the government, and estate planning. So you'll have that money when you're ready to retire. And that'd be really cool to retire with some money. And part of the way you can do that is investing in pro sports.
That's right. Go to investinprosports.com. If you want to be a part of the conversation this morning, you can call us up on the Buffy's Catering Hotline. That number, 979-693-1150. You can text that number as well. Let's go around the room and say hi to the people. We don't have anybody at the Angry Elephant Houston Social Center because they're all on spring break being 2%ers. But Nick Savage is never a 2%er. Nick, good morning, buddy.
Howdy, good morning, y'all.
What's up?
Well, just talking Aggie baseball real quick. I know we're not going to spend too much time on the game yesterday because, with all due respect, it's Prairie View, and me and Kate were talking about it. Is that was one of the first few games of the year where you felt really, really good about the entire game. You're not worried. Everybody does what they're supposed to do. Jay Slaviolette hits a home run, absolutely scorched it. What was it, Richard? 111 off the bat? 111 miles per hour off the bat. And now he's one away from tying Dalen Holt for the all-time home run record at A&M. It's going to be tough to get it against Alabama, but we'll see. Big series coming up.
Do you think he gets it against Alabama?
Yeah, heck yeah.
I
We're
do
talking
too.
about Jace, right?
Yeah.
Because I didn't know
Yeah, we heard you.
Oh, yeah, I was being like when I used to scuba dive, and if your regulator comes out, the way you got to do that swim move to find it. I was having a hard time finding
You're
the
trying to swim the
cable
IFB connector.
Yeah.
No, look, I would not be surprised if he does it. I am encouraged from what I've seen over the last week. I know the Texas State game wasn't that long ago, but I'm encouraged. I got to see it against Alabama, but why not now? And we did get an update on Caden Sorrell. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. It looks like he won't be back for a couple of series. All that being said, with that kind of starting rotation that they have, why not?
With that rotation, again, we said it before, they're always going to be in every game.
Yep.
Because the starting pitching is going to keep you in the game. If the hitting comes around, then you start winning all these games.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's hit a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more baseball. And then at 8:35, Tom Schuberth will be in studio. We'll have at 9 o'clock John Harris from the Houston Texans, their sideline reporter. 9:35, Trisha Ford and the A&M softball team. We'll talk to Trisha as the Aggies are about to go on the road for the first time in the SEC. 10 o'clock hour, Ryan Brauninger and Kendall Rogers to close it out with some more baseball.
Well, that's a lot of baseball.
A lot of baseball. Well, Bronny, we'll do a little baseball, a little recruiting with Bronny.
Okay.
1775, well, you can't go tomorrow.
Yeah,
but I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, how about that?
You get all the breaks.
I do.
Maybe they ought to just move the SEC tournament to College Station and
cater.
Well, I was just going to say, if you win, you get to go to 1775.
And if you lose?
My idea of Selection Sunday would be going over to 1775 and saying, I'm going to either select the brisket, or I'm going to select the pork ribs, or I'm going to select the jalapeno cheese sausage, or I'm going to select the turkey or pulled pork.
And how long?
That's a Selection Sunday.
How long do you get on the carnivore diet? Until when?
Until the end of March.
And then at the end of March, what will be the first thing you order at 1775?
Queso mac and cheese. The glorious queso mac and cheese.
They're open Thursday through Saturday, 11 a.m. until they're sold out. Online ordering turns off at 10 a.m. 1775txbbq.com. Call out 979-492-6241. It is 1775.
It's good.
And we are back here on TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We are in the Rollo Insurance Studio. It is the Go Hour presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations. David Nuño, Olin Buchanan, here on Wednesday, March the 12th, 2025. Had some friends here in studio a little while ago watching what we do. Brandon Davenport and his daughter. A good friend who's trying to talk his daughter into going to A&M, as we all should be, as good Aggies, getting our kids to go to Aggie Land.
Yep. I wish
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had been able to do that.
Well, I didn't bring it up because of that, but my boys want to go play soccer somewhere, so it's probably not going to be here. But
Well, they don't have a soccer team here, do they?
right, they don't. That's the goal. They may end up at A&M. I'm going to try for them to end up at A&M. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about baseball. Just a couple things I want to. So Bronny did update. Surgery's not going to be needed, but it sounds like the chances of him returning before the first couple of conference games, or series, I should say, are unlikely. So we'll see if maybe he comes back for the Kentucky or the Tennessee series. The offense certainly looks different without Caden Sorrell, and obviously without Gavin Grohovic. But I don't want to say yesterday was. I mean, yesterday is not good news. It's not as bad as it could have been. It's certainly not as good as it could have been either.
Well, you just keep waiting on him, right?
Yeah.
And he's worth the wait. At least last year, if he was who he was last year, he's worth the wait. And you hope that when he gets right, that he can even be better than he was.
Yeah.
And if he's just what he was last year, he's gonna be a boost to that offense, that lineup.
He will. He will.
So, again, it's disappointing that he's not ready this week, but hopefully we won't have to wait much longer.
Couple notes from yesterday. A&M 10 hits, season high 9 walks, scored in all 6 innings, or offensive innings, I should say. Terrence Keel, the second, 3 for 4, 2 runs, 2 RBI, 2 stolen bases, batting .420 on the year. Jace Lavalette, as we mentioned, to open up the show, 1 home run shy of tying the program record. He's 55th career home run. He's got 161 career RBIs.
Yeah, he's been such a productive guy, and when he hits the ball, it's more often a extra base hit than a single when he hits the ball. Is that uncommon? Like if you get say 100 hits, 51 of them would be extra bases. Is it? I guess that's what I'm saying. Is it uncommon for a player to have more extra base hits over the course of a season or career than base hits?
Nick, do you know the answer to that one right there?
I would say yes.
It is common.
No. It's uncommon for someone to slug like that.
Yeah,
I would think so. But I've watched. If he makes contact, it's probably going a long way.
And here's another one for you. A lot of people don't want to look at what this team could be better here soon. This 5 straight games without an error.
Oh, that's important.
That is very important after the way the season started.
Especially if you're not a team that you can go out and expect to score 10 runs. Well, then you surely don't want to be helping your opponent.
Right. So error-free ball. You had 5 pitchers yesterday. None of them gave up a run. 4 hits combined. Look, I know it's just PV. I'm not jumping up and down because I want to see them do it against Alabama and beyond. But for a couple of the games and a couple of the midweek games, you saw bad pitching, you saw some tough pitching, and you saw some error baseball. And that's not what we've gotten in the last couple of games. The Texas State game wasn't that far ago, and I know they lost the game on Sunday. But all that being said, trending in a better direction. I wouldn't say trending in the right direction completely yet, trending in a better direction.
Yes.
I have numbers to your statement, by the way, just because I wanted to check it myself. So Jace has 156 career hits at A&M. 88 of them are extra base hits. That's a 56% extra base hit clip.
Yeah. He said if he just makes contact, more often than not, he's going to send the ball to the wall.
He's going to send the ball to the wall. Let's do this. We'll hit a break. Tom Schuberth, I think we're going to have him on Zoom, Nick. I don't know if I told you that. I think we're going to have him on Zoom. He's enjoying the beach somewhere. I don't know where, but he texted me yesterday like, hey, how about this? I'm at the beach. So we'll talk to Tom Schuberth on the other side. All right, let's keep water local, guys. I deeply care about this community, and I know you all do as well, in our environment and our children's future here in Brazos County. And Robertson County and beyond. We rarely think about water until we need it, but water is truly the lifeblood of everything we love about home, our neighborhoods, our schools, our parks, and the very quality of life that we enjoy. Right now, we're facing droughts, rising temperatures. Something concerning is happening with out-of-state interest and neighboring communities, all working to take the most precious resource away from us, which is water. That's why I'm asking you to consider supporting Keep Water Local. It's a coalition of your neighbors, local business leaders, and community voices united with one purpose: protecting our water and our future. As raising kids here in the Brazos Valley, we realize that water isn't just about what comes on our taps, but it's about preserving the Aggie spirit, sustaining our farms that have operated for generations, and ensuring businesses can thrive here for decades to come. And the truth is, giving away our water means giving away our future. Visit keepwaterlocal.org and click to get involved today. Together, we can ensure that water stays where it belongs, right here in our community, supporting our way of life for generations to come. It is Keep Water Local. And we are back here on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. The Go Hour presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. Let's go to the Buppy's Catering Hotline. That's where we find the coach, Tom Schuberth, here on the program at some awesome beach somewhere. I don't know where he is. What's up, Tom?
Good morning, guys. How's it going?
All right. How are you, buddy?
We're doing great. We're down at Galveston, so we're not too far from home.
Okay. All right. Well, good to talk to you this morning. Let's just start things off with a question that Ag Engineering 12 put on the YouTube page, actually for Billy a couple days ago, and we never got to it. Caught my attention this morning. What is it going to take for this to be considered the best Aggies basketball team that we've seen?
Well, obviously the teams have advanced all the way to the Sweet 16 before, so I think they have to go there and maybe a game beyond to get to the Elite Eight. There's been some pretty impressive teams with Coach Kennedy and with Billy Gillespie, and I think they need to at least make the Sweet 16. They got to get 2 wins, and then anything that happens from there would be kind of gravy.
Yeah, great. A good season. It would be sweet. The second weekend.
Yep.
I mean, that'd be a successful season. A great season starts by going places you've never been before, like the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I think for them to be the best Aggie basketball team, again, I think what happens is when you're an old-timer like us, you fall in love with the one that did it first or one of the ones that you most remember. And for them to pass AC's teams, for me, they have to get to the Elite Eight. They can't just get to the Sweet 16. They'd have to get to the Elite Eight.
Yeah. What that does is it removes the question.
Yeah.
The debate, because we can debate Shelby Metcalf's team that beat North Carolina in double overtime and played a real competitive game against national champion Louisville. Some really old timers, older than me if that's possible, would say that's the best team ever. And of course, the Gillespie's team and quite frankly, one of Turgeon's teams, they got hosed against UCLA.
Oh, yes, they did.
I mean, they got cheated in that game. So that was as close. Somebody says that's the best team. If you get to the Elite Eight and go where no other team has gone, you have to say, well, that's the best team ever.
Tom, any take? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I agree with you guys. Obi, I think the Shelby Metcalf team might have been the best team. You know, back then, very few teams even made the NCAA tournament. I mean, there were, at one time, it used to be like 20 teams got in. Now, of course, there's 68. So you had to be really an elite team, and you were playing really like an Elite Eight game, your first game of the tournament. You know, I'm going to make it personal here, but in 1977, David, 76-77, I was at UNLV, and we made it all the way to the Final Four. And our first round opponent, we were ranked number 3 in the country, and our first round opponent was the University of San Francisco, who was number 1 in the country. How about that? That's how bad they wanted UNLV to get beat. So the NCAA and the selection committee has changed their format and made it a lot easier, obviously, to advance. And, you know, the first and second round games are much easier for the better teams.
Tom, what's your takeaway from the way they've played? The Auburn game obviously was awesome. The LSU game was, as OB pointed out, for 30 of the 40 minutes, they were fantastic. Just what are your takeaways from these last 2 games?
I think we've talked. I think they've been pretty predictable this whole season, and particularly at the end. Maybe the only game I was really shocked and surprised was losing at home to Vanderbilt. All the other games, I've kind of figured that could happen. I really felt comfortable about beating Auburn at home. I knew LSU would be a struggle. You know, it's always a struggle. Your last game of the year, you know, you're in a tournament, NCAA tournament. You're playing a senior night. So I think they've been super predictable. It just goes back to, can they play with that identity and that swagger they have? And if they can beat anybody. But I'm fearful, too, that if, you know, things go bad and maybe they miss a couple shots they should make, or, you know, they don't get those key offensive rebounds, anybody could upset us. So, but what I do love, and I don't know how you guys feel, I've been trying to listen to you, even being on vacation, David, that's how much I enjoy listening to you guys, is that I think they got the perfect draw in the SEC tournament. I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, why? Why is it the perfect draw?
Well, to me, there's 5 teams in the SEC that you could arguably say are as good or better than Aggies. Obviously, the 4 teams that finished ahead of them, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Florida. And I think Kentucky's the hottest team right now. To me, they may win the SEC tournament. And 4 of those teams are on the opposite side of the Aggies. So they're only going to face one of them if they keep advancing. Tennessee's the only team, and I heard earlier this morning you guys talking. I think we match up great against Tennessee, even though we lost at home. We played poorly, and I guess you can call it a revenge game. But I love the way we match up against everybody except Auburn, Alabama and Florida, and then I'd throw Kentucky in there. I think Alabama and Florida are kind of our formula to success with a little bit more offensive consistency. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with all that. You know what?
I like the Tennessee matchup for what you said earlier.
I do, but here's the thing. In a perverse sort of way, I'm a little more concerned with the first round game against either Vanderbilt or Texas than I am against Tennessee. I know Tennessee's better than them, but here's the reason why. Both of those teams, especially if it's Texas, but really both of them to a certain degree, are playing with a desperation.
Yeah.
Can A&M, how hard is it, Coach, to get a team in A&M situation to match the desperation with which your opponent in that situation is playing with?
Well, I've never been a proponent of a lot of buys. I understand in the SEC you have to do it with 16 teams, but every coach that I've talked to, and I personally feel this way, you're right, OB. Your first game is your most dangerous, particularly when you're sitting and watching. There's not a player in the country that doesn't want to be out there playing today. Really, to be honest with you. I mean, not that they be a low seed, but the players enjoy playing. So you're going to face a Vanderbilt or Texas team that's pretty good. Obviously, they both have beaten us, and they already have a game under belt. So all the jitters and all the, butterflies and all that's out, and they're in comfortability. Now, once you get to that 4th and 5th game, maybe then the fatigue factor sets in. So I do think it's dangerous, but again, I just have confidence in the Aggies that they match up well against both of those teams. We've lost to both of them, so I think the focus will be there. I'm confident we're playing Tennessee. I mean, I'm already looking forward to the matchup, and I guess I can put my money where my mouth is and bet on it. But I really feel good about the first round game, and then I feel good about Tennessee, to be honest.
Tom, how important is it, or not important, but how big of a factor could it be that this is the last dance for this A&M squad, right? You have 8 seniors, a lot of rumors about what the future could look like. You've got a great piece in the middle of the paint with Pharrell Payne that is going to be here hopefully a little bit longer. But other than that, these are men that are going to be moving on to the next phase of their life, professionally or whatever they decide to do.
Yeah, I haven't navigated the transfer portal like coaches have now, but I know it's got to be difficult, and particularly when you have 8 really good seniors. And then, I think Coach Williams, and this is a credit to him, his culture is different than, I would say, 85% of the teams in the country. So he's not just going out there grabbing, high scoring, high stat individuals. He's looking for guys that can handle his culture and be successful in it. So can you imagine trying to replace 8 of those guys and finding that kind of combination? Now, at the same time, he might not need 8 guys, just a couple key pieces with having Payne coming back and so forth. But, I don't envy those guys because it's going to be difficult. And this is a unique team with 8 seniors, and they're all contribute. And then the other 2 guys, the 10 players that can help you win. That's why I think they're a dangerous team, obviously in the SEC tournament and even in the NCAA tournament. Usually deep teams with a lot of depth go far in the NCAA.
The LSU coach said that Buzz Williams' team plays with a unique math. Do you know what that means?
I would say talking about the analytics of the offensive shooting and rebounding. And again, I had trouble figuring it out at first. David, you and I talked a lot. We were like concerned about the shot selection a little bit. And I guess the bottom line is when you're on offense, and we used to call it offensive efficiency, how often do you score each time you have the ball? And I think that's what Buzz looks at more than anything. That's why I don't think what we would call questionable shots bothers him, and then that builds confidence in his shooters. But that's what I would think he meant by that, OB, that, the math and the analytics of how he's winning. And sometimes, I don't know if you guys agree, in all sports, sometimes your identity happens by accident. I don't think Buzz went into coaching Texas A&M the last couple of years and saying, you know what, I'm not going to worry about shooting the ball well. We're just going to be the best offensive rebounding team in the country. I think they evolved into that with the athletes they have and the length, and then they kind of jump on it and steal it. I think John Calipari's a master at that. He'll find an identity and he'll jump on it and kind of say he invented it or created it, and that's how he wanted to be successful. But there's so many different ways to win. That's one thing I've noticed from being afar and not coaching any longer and then covering games, is that it's so impressive how the different styles and the different matchups and how coaches can find a way to be successful. And I think Buzz Williams is a master at it in the way he does it. And it may not be the most comfortable, because it is kind of, you got to sit there and, we better rebound the ball. But it's a way that's been very successful.
Talking to Tom Schuberth here on TexAgs Live. All right, Tom, let's talk about the mindset. Let's close out with this question. The mindset of teams in A&M's position versus the mindset of teams that are still trying to make sure that they get into the NCAA tournament. How many of those teams, the Auburns, the Tennessees, their singular focus right now is on winning the SEC tournament, or how much of it is thinking about what's the next phase? And yeah, they'd like to do well, but it's not all about what happens right now.
Well, I don't believe in that, David. I think you try to win the next game, and you're trying to win the SEC tournament. I mean, that and all those teams you just mentioned are obviously in the NCAA. So, yeah, it does take a little pressure off you. But I never bought into the fact that, we don't mind if we lose early so we can rest. I think that's a bunch of crap. I think you're trying to win. And this is one thing that's bothering me, David. I'd like to hear your guys' points. They're talking about Auburn still being a number one seed. I have a problem with that. Overall seed, excuse me. They have lost their last two games. One of them was at home. And granted, these are great opponents they're playing. Let's say they lose their first game in the SEC tournament. You're telling me the number one seed overall is on a 3-game losing streak? I mean, shame on the selection committee and all those prognosticators that come up with these formulas. I mean, you have to put Florida ahead of them, maybe even Alabama, and maybe even like Duke. Yeah. I mean, how do you say Auburn can be number one? I love the position A&M's in. I think they're right there. They're kind of building momentum, and that's really what you want. And you want to be an even kill, because if you get too high and too low, you'll find a way to adversity will, get you. And so I think A&M's in a great shape. But even if they were to lose the first round, OB, they're going to be good. I think, David, remember we talked about, I think they're a 4 seed, and deservingly. Yeah. I don't know. I don't mean to be a negative person here, but I don't think they deserve a 3 seed. That means they're one of the 12 best teams in the country. I think they're the 5th best team in their league. I think there's 5 or 6, 7 teams that are a little better. Now, they had a tremendous schedule, though. So, and they've been successful with it. So maybe they deserve that 3 seed. If they were to win the SEC tournament, I think they could get it as easy as a 2 seed. But I don't think they're going to win the tournament.
OB, wrap us up. We got about 15 seconds.
Okay, well, look, I agree with a lot of things that Tom said. As far as A&M goes, if the SEC is the best conference, and some people are saying ever, yeah, then and you're 5th in that, and have a win over the number one team
with 3 probable number one
and
seeds?
all those quadrant 1 and quadrant 1A victories, I have no issue at all with them putting them as a 3. And I know they're in this discussion as a 2. I don't know about that, but to me, a 3 seed makes complete sense.
We got to drop it right there, Tom. Enjoy your trip, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Tom Schuberth there on the Bumpy's Catering Hotline. All right, we're talking Rollo Insurance. The difference is real. They're an independent insurance company built around educating you on exactly what you're paying for. They do the shopping for you so that you can accomplish all of your insurance goals. They've got 60 offices in the great state of Texas, but their headquarters is on Highway 6 right here in College Station. You see all their crew all around town. If you go to the grocery store, to an Aggie football game, any Aggie athletics game, you'll see Jason, Jackson, the whole crew, Morgan, Keith. They will take wonderful care of you. They are my personal insurance provider, and they have several other TexAgers here that they take care of. The number is 888-44-ROLLO. That number again, 888-44-ROLLO, or go to rolloinsurance.com/TexAgs. That's rolloinsurance.com/TexAgs. And we're back, TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. OP, in the first segment, we talked about the Andy Staples, Ari thing, and I mentioned about 8-4 being spoilers, and they wanted to, somebody texted the show that says, hey, they didn't predict 8-4 for us. What they said was, we're on a schedule of lots of teams trying to make strides this year, Auburn, South Carolina, Florida. They said if we go 8-4, it means we likely beat at least a couple of those teams and won't hit their goals. I'm not worried about other people's goals.
Right.
I'm worried about A&M's goals.
Exactly.
And I think that was kind of your point.
Right. I have a tendency not to be as concise as I need to be.
No, I think I was just fixing if I made it sound like they predicted 8-4. I don't think they're predicting 8-4. They're saying if they're 8-4, that's a good season with this schedule.
Good, right?
That they've disrupt others.
Yeah, and like I'm saying,
good is 10.
What I
actually
base,
good is 9. I think
what I base
9.
what's good at A&M has nothing to do with disrupting other people's season. It's what you do with your season.
Good is 9 wins. Great is making the playoffs.
Yeah.
And what's greater than great? National championship.
Yeah. You don't even have to put an adjective on it.
Yeah. But for this program, the next, not logical step, the next foreseeable step is playoffs.
Playoffs.
Or 9 wins. On the teeter of talking about playoffs, right? Yeah. Which they were this year at 8-4, 8-5. But that's the next step. And then from there, for sure, a playoff. OB, thank you, sir.
Yep.
When we come back on TexAgs Live, John Haddis. We'll talk to Johnny on the other side. A lot of moves in the NFL we'll get into. That and more. It's TexAgs Live. We're back here on TexAgs Live. We are presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We are in the Rollo Insurance Studio, hour number 2 of the program. Let's go to the Bumpy's Catering Hotline. That's where we find John Harris, Houston Texans sideline reporter, and the founder of FootballTakeover.com. Johnny, good morning, buddy.
Good morning, D. How you doing?
I'm good, man. The Texans all over the news. We'll start off with one that hits home. Kenyon Green, they're traded to Philadelphia. for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Talk to us about the move, and there's several moves on the offensive line, by the way.
Yeah, for Kenyon needed a new start. I think this is a fabulous move for Kenyon on a number of different levels. I think it's going to be good for Kenyon to get out of the state of Texas, get out of Houston. You think about, he played at Atascocita, he goes to A&M, he plays for the Texans. Like, he was in this little bubble, and I think he needed to get out of it. And I think going to Philadelphia with Jeff Stoutland as the offensive line coach is going to help him immensely. So I think this is actually a good thing for Kenyon Green. And at that point, I don't think that the Texans saw a future with Kenyon. They just didn't. They had 3 years with him, and he was injured a lot of that time. And then when he wasn't injured, he wasn't making progress, especially as a pass protector. And they just realized it's not right. And look, we're renovating the entire house, so let's see what we can do. And then all of a sudden you call Philly and you get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who I liken it to like a chicken sandwich. Like, you've got chicken sandwiches, and then you've got, a spicy chicken sandwich, and then you got Nashville hot chicken sandwich. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is Nashville hot. He is spicy and then some, and I think that's exactly what D'Amico's looking for. I don't know what this means for Jimmy Ward going forward. Jimmy's 32, going into his 11th year in the league, I believe it is, maybe 12th year. And so Chauncey's C.J. Gardner-Johnson's only 26, I think, 26, 27. So I think you upgrade, and depending on what happens with Jimmy, maybe you keep both of them. They both have swarm tendencies, and so it's a pick swap, and you had to give up a player that you really didn't see a future with. So to me, it felt like a great trade for the Texans. I think it's a really good move, like I said, for Kenyon. Get out, get away from home, go grow up, mature up there. What did the Eagles have to, what did the Eagles have to lose? They had already drafted a number of players that could give them what CJ gave them as they saw it. And so, hey, let's take this young lineman that might still have something and see what we got. The Texans did this back in 2019. They made a trade with the Chiefs. Martinez Rankin was a third-round draft pick. They were going to rely on him to play guard. He just couldn't stay healthy, and they didn't see a future with him. And at the end of training camp, they traded Martinez Rankin for the Chiefs running back Carlos Hyde. And everybody's like, oh, you're giving up on a lineman? Oh, my God. And they're like, well, this Carlos Hyde's got something. Let's see what happens. Carlos Hyde rushed for 1,000 yards. And it was probably one of the only good moves Bill O'Brien, the GM, did make. So I think we'll see where this one ends up going, but I think it's good for Kenyon. I've thought this for Kenyon for a long time. Being a Houstonian, he's one of my guys. I want to see him go up there and be an all-pro. I want to see him be a Pro Bowler, and I hope that happens. And I think that Texans fans, albeit sometimes unreasonable, I think they would look at it and be happy for him because he needs a fresh start. And speaking of fresh starts, that's what the Texans are doing with this offensive line. Finally, working for the team, David, I got to kind of hold my tongue on certain things. But blowing up the offensive line the way they're doing right now, I can't tell you how excited I am for that. Now, a little anxious to see how they fill it out. But the three moves that they've made, I think, have really given me excitement about what this team could be. Instead of being about Instagram and clout and followers and pass protection grades, it's now going to be about the right things. How you grind every day, how we protected CJ that day, how we ran the ball, setting the tone up front. Those things are now going to become priorities for this offensive line, not whether you are the number one offensive lineman paid in the league.
Johnny, I want to talk about Laramie Tunsil going to the Commanders because we got a lot of Cowboy fans here. Now you see the Eagles getting stronger, or they hope to get stronger. The Commanders are adding to their offensive line. And then I think about Laramie, that I was there when he was traded to the Texans. And I just think to myself, it never felt like a great fit, but he lasted longer than I kind of expected. Just how do we kind of look at the Laramie Tunsil time with the Texans and now what he could do with the Commanders?
I think I always felt like what's the words? It's complicated.
Yeah.
I always felt like that's the relationship status that Laramie had with the Texans, with Houston, with everything. Laramie is unflinchingly about the bag and about Laramie. Like, CJ said it on the Pivot podcast last year. Now he's trying to prove a point, but you hear CJ say, well, Laramie's a vet. He don't do nothing extra. And like, that was Laramie. He didn't do anything extra. He wasn't going to show up at OTAs. He wasn't going to show up at minicamp. Look, I know those are all voluntary. Like, I get it. I totally understand that. But guys would be out grinding in 85, 90-degree heat and getting after it and getting ready for the season, and Laramie's posting pictures from Thailand. Like, all right, okay. It's just something was off. And then, he had this knee issue at the end of 2023, and he waited until way late in the summer after all his trips. And so he misses the first 2.5, 3 weeks of training camp. Now, look, I understand that the training camp isn't everything. And, you're a veteran. You don't have to go every day during training camp. And D'Amico makes sure to take care of veterans. But you can't go 2.5 weeks. Like, you don't hit all year. Like, it's the only preparation you have to be physical. So, to me, it was complicated. I've said this many times. I love Laramie. I love Laramie Tunsil. I think he's a neat dude. He really is a neat guy. But he's very stubborn in the way he goes about things. He's going to do it Laramie's way. And it had just gotten to a point, especially in 2024, where you started to see his pass protection started breaking down a little bit. He wasn't as powerful against power guys. He wasn't as quick against quicker guys. It was still damn good. And Laramie gave us 5 out of 6 seasons going to the Pro Bowl. It's fantastic. Here's the thing that I'm coming to grips with, David, or I'm trying to get people to come to grips with, because I've heard this said so often. Well, the Texans aren't a better offensive line without Laramie Tunsil. And it grates my nerves, because you are correct if you say the Texans are lesser from a physically gifted standpoint. I will not argue that. But you can't sit here and tell me better group without Laramie. Yeah, less physically gifted? Absolutely. But they will be a better group going forward, because they will be able to take some of the money from Laramie, spread it out to some other players. They will get a more cohesive offensive line room, and they will have coaches that don't feel like they have to tiptoe around the big star in the room who isn't going to do a damn thing they tell them to do anyways. So, yes, less physically gifted in the room, but the group overall will be better for all those reasons I just outlined. So I told people that, in off air, in secret mostly, like they would ask me, what do you think they're going to do? And I was like, they're going to trade Laramie. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, they're going to trade Laramie. Or they're at least going to make an effort to do it. So when I saw the news come down on Monday afternoon, I was like, yeah, I just was worried about what was going to be the return. And I felt like they got pretty good return. Now, here's the thing for Cowboys fans to consider. Laramie hears all of this. Whether he wants to ingest it, take it in, like whatever. He hears all this. He knows what's been said about him. He knows what people are saying in Houston about him. He knows that there's going to be a huge spotlight on him. I could promise you, you're going to get the best year of Laramie Tunsil's career in Washington in year one. I promise you. He is going to have as good a year in Washington as anyone could possibly have, because he now has something to prove. And as long as he stays healthy, you're going to see the best Laramie Tunsil has. But I also promise you, after the season's over, he is going to be angling for a brand new deal, and a big one. And that's A, something the Texans couldn't stomach, and B, the Washington Commanders probably can, because they're still with Jane Daniels with his rookie deal. We're getting ever so close to CJ's big deal, Will Anderson's big deal, Derek Stingley's big deal. It's going to be hard to pay top of market. Laramie is going to want, after his great year, he's going to want a new deal. He's going to want to beat Penei Sewell. He's going to want to beat whatever Trent Williams' deal is. Laramie wants to be the number one paid offensive lineman in the NFL. So, Washington, yes, you will get your great year, but you will get that. And then you will have to pay for it. And then you will actually see a guy that's 33, 34, starting to break down a little bit, and you're going to be paying him $29, $30 million a year. And that's not going to be great business. So we'll see how the Commanders handle it. But Dallas is going to see twice a year the best Laramie Tunsil has. I can promise you that.
Do you have any, not that you would have hope for the Cowboys, but can you give any hope to Cowboy fans of what the NFC East could look like if they make this move or that move?
Well, I mean, the Giants quarterback is still Tommy DeVito. I mean, that helps. And look, I think Washington, a lot of people saying, hey, the 2025 Commanders are going to look a lot like the Texans. They're kind of following that path, and I see it. So I think there could be a little bit of regression to the mean for the Commanders for sure. For sure. I mean, I think it's very simple in Dallas. Dak's got to stay healthy. Dak's got to stay healthy. I don't know how they're going to figure out Micah's deal, but they got to get that taken care of to make sure Micah's happy and not tearing everything down on his podcast and all that kind of crap. But I think the Cowboys have still got opportunities to do some good things. Now, a retiring Zach Martin ain't going to help. Now, I know that Zach was injured last year. I know he went out of our game, the Monday night game, and I could just see him walking off the field, and I'm like, that is a beat-up dude. But hats off to him. He was so good. I remember one time on one of I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, why did we get the crappy Martin? And Nick Martin wasn't bad, but Zach was just incredible. And that'll hurt. But I do think the Cowboys have got definitely pieces, but it's just that division is going to be so hard. I mean, the Eagles aren't dropping off. I mean, they might lose Mekhi Becton up front. They've already lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and then they got to deal with the weight expectations. But a Philly team is, I mean, it's still pretty loaded. But they also lost some guys up front. They lost Josh Sweat. They lost Milton Williams. But the Eagles are still the Eagles. The Commanders, I think, step back to the pack a little bit. I think if the Cowboys can just stay healthy and Dak can stay healthy, I think the Cowboys are still going to be a team to be reckoned with. But they played so horribly at home, and I don't get that. Maybe with Schottenheimer as the head coach, maybe that helps them a little bit. I don't know, but they got to get back to making Jerry World, where a place where the Cowboys win all the time. And I think one of the issues, a lot of people like going to Arlington, and so there's always this faction of like 49ers fans that roar in there. Our fans took over that Monday night game. I don't know if they get a huge home field advantage from that, but they got to make sure that when teams are coming to Arlington that they're winning those games. They go 7-1 at home and set themselves up that way. But Dak's got to get healthy. Mentally, physically, he's got to be healthy, and he's got to drive that team. And I think the Cowboys got to find, a running game opportunist, whether it's Ashton Genty. There are all kinds of running backs in this draft that they could end up with. They got to get their running game back going, give Dak some balance. I still think the Cowboys are a really talented football team, but they can't be a bunch of independent contractors, especially if Dak is out. So they got to play better together, even than they did in a stretch last year where I thought they were playing good ball. They got to do it together more often. It can't be about Micah in his pocket. I'll tell you this story, and this has got to change for the Cowboys. It's a little thing, but I think when you're trying to win a championship, you could look up at Philly and realize, man, they got a bunch of dogs. You would never see this in Philly. You would never see this in certain places. But we were playing the Cowboys on Monday night, and the Cowboys were warming up, and I was down on that side because I always like to watch the opponent just to kind of get a feel for who's lining up where, who's doing what. And I mean, a whole lot. I look out there, and I don't see Micah. I'm like, I'm like, what the? I'm looking all over for him, Dave. I can't find him. Micah's over in the crowd, signing autographs and shaking hands and kissing babies, talking to his agent, like not even involved in the pregame stuff. Then I look, and C.D. Lamb's right next to him. Like they didn't give a damn about warming up and being with the team or whatever. I'm like what? It kind of blew my mind. And I think that Cowboys, that's got to change a little bit. I mean, it's got to be like, you can't have your two stars over here signing autographs and taking pictures, before the game over here on the sidelines with the fans. I'm sorry. Like, that's not good. D'Amico Ryans would have a coronary if that ever happened. Now, after warm-ups are done, yeah, go over there, say hi to everybody before you go back in the locker room. That's cool. I see guys do that all the time. But throughout the entire pregame, they did that. I'm like, this is bizarre. So there's got to be a little bit more all for one, one for all sort of attitude in Dallas as well. And, I don't hate the Cowboys. You know that, David. I don't hate the Cowboys. Cowboys fans can grate my nerves, but I don't hate the Cowboys, especially after what they did for us after Hurricane Harvey in 2017. I can't hate him, but I've always liked Dak. I like Parsons. I think he's he's out there. He's unique, but they got to get back to playing better team ball. And I think that's something the Texans have got to do as well. But I think the Cowboys have got to do it a little bit more so on both sides of the ball, whereas the Texans have got to start doing it on the offensive side of the ball.
Johnny, how surprised were you that Myles Garrett decided to stay in Cleveland? Obviously, that's a huge number, but were you surprised the way it seemed like it was trending?
Nah, man. Green speaks. You put a big bag in front of anybody and say, okay, what are you going to do now? Okay, I'm going to take that. So it didn't surprise me at all. I was a little bit surprised because I know Myles is what's the right way of saying this? Myles is different than a lot of NFL players. And he got paid a big bag. But I think what Myles understood was that the Browns just weren't going to trade him. And Myles also realized, okay, I can do the Deshaun Watson thing and basically sit out the entire year. But what does that do for me? I got to play. This impacts my legacy. Like, I got to play. And so if the Browns are just entrenched, like they're in concrete, not going to move, and they just threw $40 million APY at me, okay, I'm an idiot if I don't, jump on that. All right, let's do this. Let's go. Cleveland's been good to me. Let's stay. So from a million miles away, you can look at it and go, oh, it was all about the money. It was all about the money. Yeah, but I think that Myles also saw that Andrew Berry was digging his heels in and basically saying, okay, big boy, you can sit out, but we ain't trading you. You're a Cleveland Brown. We're not trading you. And it's probably a good move by Andrew Berry. It's going to cost him some cash, but we'll also see what happens because he did that with Deshaun Watson too. They were told they were out. They were done. They were out of the mix. And Andrew Berry called David Moore again and said, hey, what if we give him an all-guaranteed contract, $230 million? Deshaun Watson's a Brown, baby. Let's go. So Andrew Berry is not going to take no for an answer. Very stubborn. I think he's a good GM. I think he's had some bad luck with that whole Deshaun Watson thing. But I think Myles also saw the writing on the wall, too. And I'm like, if I said I wasn't going back to a place, but then that place says, no, we're not letting you go, and then that place offers you the highest paid contract in NFL history for a non-quarterback, what are you going to do? I mean, of course you're going to take it. And all these idiots that are criticizing him, nationally about, it was all about the money. Be about the money for you too, pal. So, look, if I wanted to get away from the Texans and Texas said, hey, look, we're going to pay you $1 million a year. Oh, boy, this is a hard decision. No, not really. I'm taking $1 million a year. I'm sticking right here. So I know Myles said he wanted to, play for a winner and everything. And Cleveland has won games when they've had good quarterback play. And so maybe they can do that again with Myles leading the way. I'm glad he's back with Cleveland. I do not want to see him go somewhere like the Ravens or the Chiefs and we have to play them in a playoff. Nah. At least in Cleveland, we know they've got quarterback issues. So, it's tough for Myles. And I'd like to see Myles play in big playoff games. But, one of the greatest of all time, J.J. Watt didn't even play in a championship game in his conference. So, it happens. But you still can be great, and he can still be a Hall of Famer, which he's going to be. And now he's going to be very, very – he can buy the damn Hall of Fame if he wanted with that money. So, and he doesn't have very far to go get it. It's like 45 minutes away. I'm happy for Myles. I've always loved Myles. You know that. I think he's a unique dude in the NFL, that he's not this kind of Neanderthal meathead that just, I think about money and football. He's a good dude, philanthropic, always been great about A&M. So I'm glad for him. I'm happy for him. And I'm happy that he's staying in Cleveland, if I'm being brutally honest.
Johnny, let me close out with an A&M football kind of, not even question, just talking point. And I don't think this was not a disrespectful comment, but from Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman, they had a podcast how A&M could be disruptors in the SEC this year. And even if they go 8-4, that could be, they could disrupt LSU's potential season, big season, others, right? We know Texas is on there, Notre Dame. How do you kind of look at that as the disruptor, knowing that this fan base is starved for a step? And that step, to me, the baby step is a 9-win season, right? Because I think we were on the precipice of that this year. But beyond that, right? Like 8-4, being disruptors, I guess it sounds good, but it doesn't sound good to me. But just kind of take that thought and run with it the way your mind works.
Well, I like both those guys. I like to listen to them at times. I think they can be sort of hot takey, but then again, who isn't on radio? I mean, even I try not to be hot takey, but every now and again you say something that you're like, God, what did I say that for? And sometimes you say something to get clicks. And, when that's said, it got the reaction, I'm sure, from Aggies everywhere. Like, wait a second, disruptor. What the hell does that mean? No, we got to be in this thing. And I think that's more the situation than anything else, because it's a team that, okay, yeah, you essentially played an SEC championship game play-in, and if you score on the goal line like you should have, now all of a sudden that fourth quarter gets really interesting, and who knows whether a mistake happens for Texas, and you knock off Texas and you go to the SEC championship game. Like, it may on the surface not look like, especially in that game early on, Texas had moments where it really took over the game and kind of dominated it. But A&M makes a play, scores that touchdown, makes a play here, there. Who knows, they win that game. I wouldn't call that a disruptive team. I would say that A&M, I expect A&M to be in the mix. Feel good about Marcel at quarterback. Feel the offensive line has got some dudes coming back. Now, I will say on the defensive line, there's some work to do. Losing 3 guys that are probably going to be drafted in the top 125 of the draft, that doesn't help you. But there's plenty of talent to be more than a disruptor. When I think about disruptor, I think about the Jacksonville Jaguars in the NFL. Some team that you don't expect coming out of nowhere, and they're doing things a little differently with a young GM, and they're kind of shaking up the AFC South. I don't look at it that way. A&M has been, has been a good football team, but to me, it's more about not being a disruptor, but breaking through to get to the SEC championship game. How many teams in the SEC have played a championship game since A&M's gotten in the league that are not named A&M? It's time for A&M to do that. That to me is not disruptive. That's just breaking through where you think they should be. I think there's a lot of pressure on Mike to have a 10-win season, but I especially once they go to 9 games in the SEC, I think 10-win seasons, 11-win seasons in the SEC are going to be really tough to come by. And I think as long as you beat the right teams, 9-3, you're going to have you in the mix for potentially what A&M wants to do. Look at Clemson last year. Clemson was hot garbage, I thought. But they won the games in the ACC they needed to. They get to the ACC championship game and they get SMU at they play the best game they've played all year and knock off SMU to get to a playoff. I think A&M could be better than that, but it's a more difficult conference. So to me, disruptor doesn't fit. I think it's more, we need A&M to break through. Vanderbilt can be a disruptor. Mississippi State could be a disruptor. A&M has just got to break through. Ole Miss has got to just break through. Like, Ole Miss is close, but it's like they're kind of banging their shoulder on the door, and the hinge is starting to come off, but they're not going all the way through. Ole Miss loses that game to Florida last year, and it cost them an opportunity to go to playoffs. So, are they a little bit closer to A&M? Hard to say. Lane does such a great job in the portal, and we'll see what they're made of without Jackson Dart. So, I think A&M, Ole Miss, those are teams that are just needing to break through, not be disruptors. So that, I don't know, maybe it's semantics and how you think about the word disruptor and disruptive. But I think A&M is just a good football team in the SEC that teams have got to tangle with. But there's a breakthrough kind of needed. Instead of just kind of knocking on the door, like open the damn thing and go through. And it's going to be a little bit harder than just that, but you got to go through and be 9-10. Like you know this, David. I think you just outlined it. There's a huge difference between 8-4, 9-3, 10-2. Like there's a big difference between those two, and that's where A&M has to get through. And I always use this analogy, David, real fast. When you look at ice cube and you turn it to water, like, oh, you just need it to be a certain temperature. No, what you need is a temperature and additional energy that breaks it from a different state of matter down to liquid, from solid state to liquid. There's an additional energy needed. So to go from 8 wins to 9 wins pretty consistently, yeah, it's just one win, but there's so much energy that goes into getting that one win, because that means beating Tennessee. It means beating Georgia. It means beating one of those teams that are already established in the conference and doing it consistently. That's, I think, the next step for Mike is beating those teams, beating LSU consistently, knocking off of Georgia, knocking off, Texas. That's the next step, but it takes a lot more energy to win that one more game. And so that's kind of the way I look at it. So a little physics lesson for all the engineer Aggies out there. I did my best. So hopefully that was understood.
Johnny, thank you, brother. We're late for a break. I appreciate your time, brother.
I know. I love you. Tell everybody I own one. Thank you, brother.
Hugs, brother. John Harris, the professor, footballtakeover.com founder. All right, we'll hit a break. We'll come back, short segment, then Trisha Ford. Right now, we're talking Heritage Films. YourHeritageFilm.com is the website. Get a documentary film done about your family, right? If it's a big birthday coming up, a milestone birthday, if it's a big anniversary, if it's a big event, if it's a good sporting event that you guys either go and watch and tailgate at, or maybe even participate in some kind of cool event, a triathlon, a weekend football game, whatever it may be. Let Chance McClain and his company tell the story behind that big event, that big milestone, that big family ranch, the family business, whatever it may be. Chance can do a 2-hour documentary film for you that you are going to cherish. You're going to share with the next generation after that. He can do it. He'll come bring his crew there. He'll light it. He'll edit it. And about 2 months later, you have yourself a Netflix-style documentary. The website is YourHeritageFilm.com. YourHeritageFilm.com. 713-893-8341. 713-893-8341 is Heritage Films. All right, we're back. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. We're going to make this a short one because Trisha Ford is already in the lobby, so we'll bring her on here in a moment. But I did want to say this about something that Johnny talked about breaking through, right? It's different. Can they be disruptors? Sure. I want them to be disruptors on their path to a 10-win season. And this is a huge year for Coach Elko, for this program. They're all huge years, let's be honest. But like a huge year because you need to see that next step up with a more difficult schedule. That being said, the thing that I took away, the physics lesson that Johnny gave us there, breaking through the energy it takes from 8 wins to 9 and then from 9 to the next level, right? There is you've got to be cleaner. Yes, talent. And I think one of the things that's been come about since the combine is how many combine participants A&M had compared to a lot of the folks on their schedule, right? I think A&M with 3 compared to, a bunch of the teams that they faced with over double digits, and Ohio State, obviously the national champions, how many they had. But it goes beyond that. Yes, the talent is part of it, but the mental mistakes, the turnovers, the offsides, the energy in the weight room, which I think they're great there, the energy to get there, it's just different. There's a different level of focus along with the talent. They've got to keep adding these 4 and 5 stars. If you look at all the teams that have won national championships, they're not riddled with 3 and 4 stars. They're riddled with 5 stars. You got to keep adding those guys, but then it's got to be a singular vision and a singular unit, which is a lot harder in today's world. And when you feel like you're playing catch up in the SEC, block out all that noise, something that I know they're doing across the street, and put the right energy and have it sustain. It's the right energy that can be sustained for the entire run of the offseason and, of course, the season. All right, when we come back, we'll talk to Trisha Ford. They dropped the series to Florida, had a great first game, had a really nice third game in that series as well, just couldn't finish it off. We will talk about that on the other side. Did you or someone you know graduate from A&M within the last 12 years, and are you leading by, are you an example in business or in service? If that is the case, the Association of Former Students would like to invite you to nominate yourself or someone that you know for the 12 Under 12 Award. Each year, the association recognizes a dozen Aggies who have graduated within the last 12 years for their business accomplishments, civic or military service, philanthropic efforts, and outstanding representation of A&M's core values of excellence, integrity, leadership, loyalty, respect, and selfless service. In previous year, honorees have included leaders in business, higher education, architects, petroleum, engineers, nonprofit execs, physicians, veterans, and members of the U.S. Armed Forces. 2025 nominations close on Saturday, March 15th. That's this coming weekend, so be sure to submit a nomination soon. To learn more about the recognition and submit a nomination, please visit tx.ag/12under12 nominations. We are back here on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Trisha Ford is here to look ahead and look back a little bit. Aggie softball. So from my view, good weekend. Not the weekend you wanted, I know.
Yeah.
But like, all the work is showing you're knocking on that door. Am I seeing it? Am I being too maroon goggled here?
Probably a little bit of both, to be honest with you. I'm always going to be in that other world. But I felt like, obviously, Friday's game was a hard-fought battle. Obviously, coming through with a win for us. Saturday kind of slipped by us. We were in that game for most of it, and then all of a sudden we kind of blinked in. But we just made some things. We didn't execute some things that we needed to execute, and that's what's going to happen against a team like Florida. And then Sunday, we just couldn't quite get that big hit when we needed it. So close, but we still have a ways to go.
All right, let's go back to Friday.
Okay.
Just what that win for you, what it meant. Obviously, the milestone, the way it happened, the jubilation. Just take me through Friday.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like really fans got a great showing of two top-notch programs going at it. I felt like it kept going back and forth. Whoever's going to make that air was going to pay for it. And I just, KP, I'll be honest with you, when Mac hit the ball and then I see her going to second base, I was like, oh, dear. And obviously they had a missed throw, and KP, that dive was just magnificent. So, exciting that Davis Diamond, the 12th man, got to experience that. Obviously our 100th win as Aggies, so that's always exciting. But, it kind of set us up for a good weekend. And then... yeah, it just kind of went a different direction.
But 100 wins very fast. I know you want to get to 1,000 wins, right? There's way more is ahead for the future, and you have bigger goals for this particular season.
Yeah.
But it feels like you just got here.
Yeah.
But you've put in some time and you got to 100.
Yeah, I think honestly, and we always say this, but it really isn't me. It's obviously I have great coaches with me. I have players, and I get the credit when I get the credit and get blamed when I get blamed, So, I hope that I spend a lot of more years here in Aggie land and win a lot of games for the 12th man and really keep growing this program.
Emily Kennedy, kind of back to seeing what we expect.
She was lights out, yeah. Even on Sunday, she faced them 7 innings on Friday, 7 innings on Sunday. Really kept an offense. She kept us in the game both times, and I thought executed really well. I thought her first inning on Sunday was one of the best innings I have ever seen her throw. It was just electric. So we're in a much better headspace. I think she's feeling back to her normal self, so I'm excited moving forward.
Yeah, and so needed to see her playing like that. KK Dement just continuing to do great things as a young player.
Yeah, we're lucky. I hope people get out and watch her. She plays defense like a Dominican, great hands, great feet. Her swing, she's leading our team in home runs. I would not have that on my bingo card at the beginning of the year. But she just has a great understanding. She's disciplined. She listens, like all these things that make you a coach's dream. And so we are very, very excited to have her a part of our program and can't wait to see what she develops into.
343, 6 home runs. Let's keep it rolling. Would you say that Saturday, which got out of control, and Sunday kind of filled with missed opportunities?
100%. Yeah, we couldn't, whether it be stop the bleeding on the mound in some cases, and then on Sunday, we just couldn't get the hit when we needed to get the hit. We had traffic, we had opportunities, we had a big opportunity in the first inning to really set the tone, and then we kind of ran ourselves out of it. So it's going to happen, but you just got to get ready for Auburn and learn from it. We are so close. Florida is a program that's been in the World Series a lot. They've just been a top, I would say, 5 program for like the last 10 years, and so They've been there, they've done it, and we just have to continue to get better to become one of those type of programs.
Well, and I know that this is a typical broadcaster/coach question, but there's probably more learning opportunities in a loss than in a win. You'd much rather learn in a win.
Yeah.
But it's almost more is it?
Absolutely, and that's been our emphasis this week of like, hey, remember when we talk about X there it was. Like it showed up on Sunday or it showed up on Saturday. And it even showed up on Friday. And so these are great opportunities for us to watch some film, talk as a team, and really kind of reconnect of what our standard is and what that looks like from day in and day out with our approach to the game.
I struggle sometimes talking to coaches about things that are happening consistently because I don't want to break.
Yeah.
But Maya Perez has been getting on pace quite a bit. Just talk a little bit about that ability to continuously get on.
Yeah, I mean, she's just doing a great job of being patient in the box. She's not swinging up bad pitches. She's really just executing her game plan. We need some people around her to kind of step up. And so that's really where we've been talking a lot about as a staff is what does that look like moving forward? We have the pieces. We just have to execute. So I think Maya, she's really settled in well. I mean, her freshman year, she learned a lot. She spent a whole year learning. And a lot of players, I think even, these days would have left, and she didn't. She stayed, and now she's having a great year. And so I think you hope that people learn from that. Of like, hey, my freshman year didn't go as planned, but I kept putting in the work. I came back in a better mental space, in shape, and look what's happening now.
How about the weekend Kennedy Powell had?
Oh, God, yeah. Just dynamic, right? Offensively, on the base path. That kid's a gamer. And so she, she's very comfortable. Ava Brown, she played with her for many years, one of the Florida pitchers. Emily Kennedy and her went to high school together. So there's actually a lot of crossing of our two programs. But, she's just dynamic. She's the kid, when the lights come on, she shines.
Yeah. So Auburn, tell me, I know obviously they're highly ranked. It's going to be hard to go on the road. What can you tell me about them?
Yeah, they're just got a lot of momentum going for them. They have new coaches. Pretty much a whole new pitching staff. So S.J. Guerin is a kid. She transferred in from Oklahoma. She's a lefty, high spin rate kid. Doesn't throw very hard, but she's almost effectively slow. So it's like slow, and slower. So we're going to have to really get good pitches, think opposite field. Those, not try to do too much with the ball. I think defensively we have to continue to play clean defense. Obviously we'll use our short game a little bit with them, make them play defense. And they have a couple kids that can swing it. So they're coming off a weekend where they got swept by Mississippi State, but they were on the road. They play again tonight against Georgia Tech, and we'll look to bounce back. So it's just kind of, if we go out there and play our game, I think we're going to be fine. But you can't take things for granted in the SEC, and so they have some pieces that are going to be difficult for us, but we should be able to play our game and take the series.
What's the message to the team? Short-term memory, or is it, no, I want it to fester. I want it to be back there.
Yeah, I want it to fester a little bit.
Yeah.
I want it to fester. It should drive us, just like the Super Regionals game, like that's still festering. Like these are all things that I want us to put into our pocket, into our toolbox, and learn from, but also realize like, hey, when I come to practice and I'm tired or whatever it is, like remember some of those moments, because that's what should drive you to be great, and really kind of focus in. So I want it to fester a little bit, yeah.
I do too. I want the wins to keep on coming. Trisha, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Enjoy your trip. All right, we'll hit a break. We'll come back with a short one here on TexAgs Live. All right, we're back here on TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. Aggie softball is going to be fine. What I love about when I talk to Coach Ford, and Nick, you follow a lot of softball, you know, like there's she carries the anger, if you will, or just the frustrations of losing any game, any series, right? But it's in a good way. There's some people that want, like when they like. I think I'm better after a failure than I am after success, right? And I don't want to fail. Nobody does, and I'm not recommending failing at all. And there are some that I think about the failure more than the process after. And to me, Coach Ford is the type that, and I'm not going to call this weekend against Florida a failure, but not reaching their goals, that drives her for the next one. Okay, this is how we lost in the Super Regional. I'm going to show the world what's next.
Yeah, you could see it in her answer whenever you asked her, like, yeah, it wasn't the weekend you wanted, but you're trying to frame it, and she's like, whatever, bro, like that's not good enough for us and our standard, and I like you're getting at. That's a great attitude to have in your head coach, and I mean it's the SEC, it's like Aggie baseball, there's going to be series that get dropped. What are you going to do? Get angry about it? Or you're going to look forward to the next opportunity, and that's exactly what they have, going to Auburn. And like she mentioned, they got swept by Mississippi State. It's their home opener. They were ranked previously. I don't think they're in the rankings anymore. They're 22. Thank you, Richard. So still a ranked matchup, still a great opportunity. And, I mean, the way I think about it, you got Emily Kennedy, so you're going to have a pretty good chance no matter who you're going up against.
Well, and what you just said right there, Emily Kennedy, gives me more hope. And look, I want to be optimistic sometimes. Sometimes I want to be mad like you guys, right? But it gives me hope for baseball. Because when you got a guy like Ryan Prager and you have a stud pitcher like Emily Kennedy, it gives you a chance in every series. If Ryan Prager goes out and throws a gem this weekend on Friday night against Alabama, is anyone going to be surprised? And if Jace breaks the record on Friday night, is anyone going to be surprised that A&M wins a 4-2 game against Alabama to start the series? No, we will not be surprised, because when you do have pitching, I still believe that this offense, I don't want to call it a ticking time bomb because it's not the offense that we all signed up for, but I do believe because you have that pitching staff and the offense is starting to figure it out a little bit, right? They're not the offense we thought, but there certainly can be an offense that can win a bunch of games in the SEC. We'll hit a break. We will come back with Ryan Brauninger. I'm sure baseball will come up. Caldwell Country Chevrolet is stocking up on new vehicles for a wide selection of all the cars that you want. You can take the short drive to save money without any dealer add-ons, plus free oil changes on every new or pre-owned vehicle. They're also a business elite dealer, so they can help get you vehicles for your small business needs and your commercial needs. Reach out to them, and they will help you find the right vehicle for your business. Remember, it's not a far drive. We're talking 15 minutes. The edge of Bryan to the beginnings of Caldwell. A short conversation away, but you'll see the difference when you step on the lot and do business with the great people at Caldwell Country Chevrolet. Highway 21 in Caldwell and online at caldwellcountrychevrolet.com. And we're back here on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. It is time for Recruiting Country, brought to you by America Momentum Bank. They are the only privately owned bank headquartered in Bryan-College Station, and they are committed to helping our community prosper by offering you a wide array of personal and business banking solutions specifically designed to help build financial success with confidence and momentum on your side. Ryan Brauninger is on my left side. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
What's up?
Big win today in the Chuck, 4 o'clock. McNeese basketball in the Southland Conference Championship game against their cross-border rival, the Lamar Cardinals. So I'm repping the blue
very
and gold.
Blue shirt, yeah.
Repping the blue and gold today. And I was going to drive down there for the game. Matthew Dawson, TexAgs employee / whiz kid, was down there yesterday. I got him tickets to their semifinal game. He had a blast.
Good.
But I've got a speaking engagement tomorrow in the state capitol, and that would be a lot of driving there to Lake Charles and back, and then to Austin and back tomorrow. So just going to watch it on the tube today, 4 o'clock. I'll be locked in.
Yeah, Will Wade, he's going to be a very popular name.
He is, and I think the McNeese administration is prepared for that. Obviously, they understand kind of the hierarchy of things in college athletics, but they've done a good job keeping him there. After last year when he won the league and went to the tournament, he was a pretty hot name. And I think he just kind of liked the community of Lake Charles in that area, in that period of his life. And like kind of as he's making a transition back into big time college basketball, I think McNeese has been good to him and he's been good to McNeese, but it's understandable that he'll be tough to hold on to.
All right, let's. I know there's some baseball stuff that people are asking about. We'll do that in the second segment. Let's really get some good recruiting stuff off the ground. You sent me a note, bunch of offers out there, some new ones?
Yeah, new offers in state. And the first one was to Dylan Mitchell, whose dad, Billy Mitchell, was a DB kick returner for the Aggies in the 90s. Dylan Mitchell is running some pretty incredible track times as a freshman. He set a national freshman record over the weekend over at Cushing Stadium, the track stadium here in College Station. With a 100-meter time, and I think his prelim time broke the national record for freshmen, and then he beat that prelim time in the finals where he came in third in the state in the 100 meters. Some of those times that came out of the meet this past weekend here were incredible. That a kid from Duncanville runs sub 10, and I think the top 6 were sub 10.6.
Oh wow.
Like it's really impressive when you look at the 100-meter numbers, and it's still early in the spring for them. That as the weather heats up, typically those times get better. Yep. But Dylan Mitchell's a freshman at C.E. King. Like I said, his dad Billy played at Texas A&M. I think he played with Steve McKinney, was a teammate of Steve McKinney. So A&M and just about everybody else, when the kid runs 10.2 something in the 100 meters, A&M and everybody else hopped on board. I think he got something like 15 offers in 2 days. As a freshman who had very little varsity tape. But the reason I bring that up is because so often when I've been on here recently, we've talked about measurables.
Yep.
And how this A&M coaching and recruiting staff are now really kind of honed in on finding the measurables for kids, not necessarily their star rating, right? So obviously the kid has to be good at football. You have to be a good football player. But within that, you also have to look at the measurables and what is standing out in the NFL draft, what is standing out in the combine. When you look at some of the commonalities amongst X position group, they usually have Y traits. If you're a DB and you're a corner and you're running 4.55 or north of that, you don't get drafted.
Right.
And so I think a lot of that intel, it continues to be gathered. And when kids, not just Dylan Mitchell, but kids across the state of Texas, they go out and they put up real track times, verified track times like Dylan did. Or if you're a big guy and you're an offensive, defensive lineman, if you're throwing numbers, shot put, discus, those things translate into explosive power, short area burst. Obviously the speed, everybody can tell kind of how that plays into a football evaluation. But, you even go back and look at how Mike Elko describes some of the guys that they signed in the last class. And for instance, TK Norman. They looked at TK Norman and said, okay, he's a skinny kid, but we think he really converts whatever power he has functionality and movement. And they based a lot of that on some of his jumping numbers, triple jump, long jump numbers. And then, he gets to Texas A&M, he's starting to hold a little bit of weight, and all of a sudden, like, man, we may have found something in this kid. So they're going after measurables more so than they ever have since I've been covering it in terms of recruiting. But I always think it's cool to see a kid, like they go out there and kind of Jaden Warren's another kid at Iowa Colony that has run real times, and he's got real football tape. And so A&M jumped in the boat there. So you're starting to see kind of a coming together of really good game tape that matches, and then also some really intriguing measurables to go along with it. And every kid's timeline is different. Inevitably, there's going to be some kid in that freshman class in the state of Texas who's not as fast as Dylan Mitchell right now, but he might be in 2 years.
Right.
And so you got to kind of keep combing through all that info and keep tabs on kids that you think have some intriguing measurables as young prospects, and you bring them into camp and you look at them. I know that, like, for instance, there's a basketball or traditional basketball player that's playing defensive line. He's an underclass kid in San Antonio. And he's got some really intriguing stuff on tape, and you look at his measurables and you're going, and this kid might end up being a real player down the line. And credit to Jason Howell. He was the first one to hop on this kid and really look at his tape and say, hey, there's something there. And so I think you just kind of keep looking for stuff like that. Again, I like what this staff is doing. It's funny because we've been talking so much about recruiting the state of Texas, and if you look at the A&M commit list right now, 0 Texans on it. Now, that will obviously change, and we'll talk about kind of maybe what's upcoming for that to change. But I do know that just they are doing the best they can to make sure they're not missing anything in the state.
Yeah, well, I want to go back to what you just said about the measurables and the difference between a project who has measurables, which sometimes you hit a home run, and then the other tier, which is they're football players that they have measurables, but maybe they don't jump out on the tape immediately. It takes a little time to kind of develop.
Well, you're looking at prospects. There's a difference between a prospect and a player in whatever sport you're talking about. We see it a lot. We saw it a lot with that 2022 class. There were a lot of great prospects in that class, but how many real football players were there? And Josh Pate said something to you, and then he talked to Coach Elko about it and asked him directly. Texas A&M in the recruiting rankings has always stood out, one of the top 10 recruiting programs in the country coming out of high school, but the NFL draft, and especially the combine this year, really didn't reflect that. And Elko said, well, yeah, you always should evaluate a recruiting class on the other side instead of on the front side, evaluate it on the back side. So, and I think, we've seen that with that 22 class and the 23 class that came in right behind it that was not rated nearly as high, that had some real football players in it.
Sure
Dalton
did.
Brooks, Torian York.
Yep.
Like, those guys weren't as highly rated as some of those 22s, but they're real football players. And so obviously you're looking for, as an evaluator and a coach, you're looking for the perfect mesh of that. I want a guy that's an outstanding prospect, but is also a really good football player. Now, it doesn't always overlap like that. And when you find one like that, you have your elites of the elite player, right? He's a great prospect, has all the measurables. He's also a real football player that gets his name called on Friday nights.
Right.
So when you find both of those, you found a gem.
So you mentioned no in-state commits right now, but it could change. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, we still firmly believe that the Aggies are in a great spot with a lot of their top in-state prospects. And what we're going to start seeing when spring football ramps up is visitors coming to practice. And Jason's been on here and been on the boards, is kind of detailing guys that have plans to visit Texas A&M over the course of March and early April for those practices and potentially even the spring game. I will say this again because I brought up the spring game. That is the most overrated event, especially in terms of recruiting on the calendar. Just like, I would love to go back and track, because just anecdotally in my mind, I think about how many times people have made big deals about where kids visit for spring games, and they have no influence on the school they're going to pick. They never do. It is the most overvalued, overhyped in terms of how the fans view it event on the recruiting calendar. There's way more important things. I think the kids coming to practice and getting to see how their position coach coaches their guys specifically, and then getting to meet with them one-on-one after about how they coach, way more influential, way more beneficial to the kids' relationship with the coaches, and the coaches being able to put into action some of the stuff that they've had conversations about with these kids, how they coach, some of the things that they emphasize. The kids can come to practice and watch it. And I think that's why we saw it last year. We're going to see it this year. A much more of an emphasis from the A&M staff, coaching and recruiting, will be placed on these practices, like getting their top flight players to come watch practice, not to get their top flight players to come watch a spring game. Similarly, their junior day list were really impressive. They weren't great in number. So I think even if you were rating, to me, just looking at it and examining it as an analyst, if I was rating the hierarchy of importance for recruiting dates and recruiting visits in the spring by the A&M staff, it would be spring practices 1, it would be junior days 2, and way down in 3rd would be a spring game.
Really?
Yes. I just think they really value getting the kids up close and personal to watch them coach.
How much dialogue is happening with recruits and the current players, like when they're coming for that kind of?
I think more so you see that on official visits, when they have a player host, and typically they're spending a lot of time with the players and around the team. Either after the game they'll go out somewhere, or they'll go to somebody's house, and they'll get to sit down and talk to a lot of the guys. And I can remember hearing stories of Cam Dewberry, who's now at Alabama, but I've heard stories about him telling recruits like, hey, the one thing about when I came to A&M and the one thing about Coach Elko was like he was real matter of fact, and like he wasn't lying about anything. Exactly what he said, we did.
Right.
So obviously maybe he didn't like that. He left, or maybe he was just looking for more playing time at a different place. But I do know that there's guys on the team that will tell the kids the absolute truth, and I think that's valued.
Yeah, I agree with that. You also have mentioned these out-of-state guys that are committed. Everyone's after them. So kind of give us a rundown of what's happening there.
And, they got one out of New Jersey in Kinsler that is going to be another one that everybody's after. And then what's interesting to me is like A&M's in a pretty good spot for some of these reclasses. You look at Richard Wesley on the West Coast, who was a 5-star player in the class of 27. He reclasses to 26. In-state, you look at Booby Feaster at DeSoto, was a 27, reclasses to 26. And A&M's in a good spot for both of those kids. And there may be one that I'm missing as well. But, in this day and age, how many of those do you take? Because they just took one at quarterback in Brady Hart in the last class. And kids are less, for lack of a better word, they're less interested in waiting their turn now. So a kid that is a full year removed or has a full year taken away from their development in high school, both strength, overall durability, mental stuff. Yeah. Like, are they going to be willing to kind of work through that here where it's a new environment and you're going to college classes and you're on your own? Like, there's some risk involved in that. Now, both of those that I mentioned, Wesley and Feaster, are incredible talents. And Richard Wesley is really far along in terms of his physical development for such a young kid. I think he's like 6'5", 250. So he's a really well put together kid. But still, it'll be interesting to see how many of those A&M's like, all right, we're all in on this kid, even on a reclass.
Reclassifying is way more common now, right? Like way more.
Well, and I think, you have to look at it and say, well, how much is NIL playing a factor in some of this? These kids wanting to start making money.
Or agents in their ear, right?
Well, sure, yeah. But you obviously, it's going to take a toll on your academics as well. Like, you're going to have to probably put in a lot of summer hours and maybe some mini-mesters with local junior colleges or whatever so that you get those credit hours up and being able to graduate early. So, you also, those guys that are reclassing because of that workload in school, it's going to be, I can't imagine them showing up for a spring.
Right.
So you may sign them and then they won't be there for until the summer. And, we're seeing kind of how beneficial it is to come in early and how much this staff is pushing for it with this 2025 class they just signed. All but one is here. And if Jerome Miles hadn't had that knee surgery, I have a pretty strong feeling he'd be here right now as well.
Well, and I think the reps that people don't talk about, like Look, yes, there are higher quality reps, I guess, if you will, with SEC caliber teammates that you practice with. But there's something about getting the reps at your level with your teammates. I'm not saying one is the right answer. I think for each individual case is different. But like my boys, for instance, they need another year of high school to develop, right? Because they're still here in the mind, and physically they've got a lot of catching up to do.
Well, and then if you get in a scenario where everybody is bigger and stronger than you are, and in a lot of instances faster, that can create doubt.
Yeah.
Am I ready for this? Can I do this at this level? When you can, but all you need is just the patience for your body and your brain to catch up to these guys around you. And you see that a ton with early enrollees. And it's very rare that you hear the praise reaped like a Marco Jones, where he's come in and physically he's right there with everybody else, and mentally he's right there with everybody else. Most of these kids, even that they've stayed through their senior year, there's a transition period where they've got to kind of figure it out, how to get to class, how to get to workouts, how to manage my time while also managing my brain and my body.
Right.
So there is a big transition period for a lot of these kids. So it's a roll of the dice when you start taking these reclasses for sure.
But I do like it when you are a senior in high school and you come in early, if you're a guy that expects to compete to play.
Well, I just think it's more beneficial than that, just getting all that, your routine figured out. That's so beneficial.
Before the season,
right,
you've got that figured out.
Now, but if you're doing that a whole year early and there's a lot less, you've just grown up a lot less and you're throwing yourself into the fire of something new. And I don't know, like sometimes those decisions like to reclass are made kind of suddenly.
Yeah, I was going to say, you haven't thought about it 6 months before. It's like, you know what? I'm going to do this.
Yeah, so it's interesting. And again, the kids that I'm discussing, and Brady, I'll throw Brady Hart into this, but Brady Hart, Richard Wesley, Booby Feaster, they're incredibly talented.
Right.
They are going to be highly sought after recruits. So if you're Texas A&M, you're like, well, if I don't go after them and somebody else gets them and they develop in their program, I've dropped the ball here.
Right. 100%. So, before we hit a break, let me ask you about the big board continuing to have movement. So you guys are still working on all that.
Yeah, and specifically with in-state. We looked at Legend Bay and a guy that's played quarterback in the DFW area, now moving to being recruited as an athlete. A&M offered him as an athlete after him putting up some really impressive numbers at some of the camps in DFW. And I think as we continue to just uncover the state, there's some guys making moves. I also believe that you can take a look at A&M's current roster, and maybe there's some guys that are shining in these spring workouts, and A&M's going, okay, like I like the way this kid's moving. Is there one of those in state that we can kind of plug in right after him? And I look at Amari Niblack. They come in from Texas and kind of a different looking body as a tight end, flex wide receiver, kind of do it all H-back. And then I look at the offer to James Scott at Conroe Oak Ridge and go, hey, there's some real similarities here. So I think as they learn more about their team, they may learn more about the state of Texas and their national perspective about guys they're recruiting that could come in and maybe slide in behind some of these guys that they've been impressed with so far.
All right, we'll hit a break. We'll come back with more. If you got a question for Bronny, send it in 979-693-1150. You can send it on the text line, or you can also send it on our TexAgs.com chat or the YouTube page. Right now, we're talking Bird Dog, an Aggie owned and operated company creating access to hunting opportunities. I want you to think of them as an Airbnb for your hunting opportunities. They're fantastic about that. But the way Airbnbs work, just like the Bird Dog, it helps out both sides, both parties, right? If you have a property, let them put it on there and they'll find the hunters for you. But beyond that, they're helping out ranch owners with ways to find tax benefits that you're not thinking about. They're going to optimize all those tax benefits. If you're farming or running cattle, you don't even have to run hunting on your land. You can just have farming and cattle on your land, and they're going to optimize and find you those tax benefits. Some of their clients are making an extra $100 to $500 per acre of land. They can be your personal consultant and help you maximize the income on your land. So if you're a rancher or a broker, you need to talk to them as they can help your buyer or seller understand the additional ways to make money. You don't even have to sell hunts for this program to work for you. The website is easy, birddogit.com. That is birddogit.com. Check them out. And we're back, TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Ryan Brauninger still with us. Bronny, I made a comment earlier. I had Coach Ford in studio, and we were talking about Emily Kennedy. And I used the Ryan Prager analogy there. The way Emily Kennedy pitches, you have a chance to win every series, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I used that with Prager. And I do know, and Ag Engineering points out, that a softball pitcher can come in multiple games. I know that doesn't happen. But when you got a dude like Ryan Prager on a Friday night, I don't care who you're facing, you've got a chance to win that game regardless of how your offense is clicking. He's going to put you in a position more often than not to win. I know it's one of the 3 games of a series, but my point is having that guy as your Friday night ace is why there was a lot of optimism going into this season that he came back along with the offense.
Well, I think, too, it's not just Ryan Prager. It's Justin Lampkin and Miles Patton, the way they've thrown the ball. They're going to keep you in every game of every series. Now, inevitably, they're going to have a stinker where they're going to get beat up, or maybe they don't have feel for the strike zone that day, and it'll be up for to the offense to carry them, for a change. I will say, in regarding the offense, I'm still think they're going in the right direction. There's signs of life offensively. And one thing that we probably haven't talked about is now they are 5 straight games without an error, and I don't know how many consecutive innings. It was 36 going into last night. They played 7 innings last night. 43, and then you'd have to go back to that UTSA game to see when the last error was made. But you're in the mid-40s or maybe even close to 50 consecutive innings without an error. That's a major improvement. Major improvement. And all of a sudden that fielding percentage is starting to click back to not where it needs to be, but it's coming closer to respectable. I've been completely okay for the vast majority of the last 7, 8, 9, 10 days with the offense in terms of their swing decisions and ball striking. I think they've compressed the baseball consistently more than they had in the previous couple of weeks. Go back and look at that game that they lost on Sunday to Cal Poly, where Cal Poly rolled through 18, or I can't remember if it's 18, but it was in the low teens maybe, of consecutive hitters that were retired. And go look at how they were retired. They're getting fisted on ground balls, into the bat pop-ups. Nothing really challenged Cal Poly in that game. To me, that is eye-opening. So you can't just look at offensive baseball based on production. I just talked to Coach Ford about it in the lobby there. She's like, you could swing the bat really poorly and score 8 runs in a game. And then you could swing it really well and score 2 runs. Right. So it's not always, runs and batting average are not always a clear indicator of how you swung the bat in that particular game. Now, over the course of the season, sure. Your luck, unless your name's Austin Bose in 2023, where he went through an entire season of just being the most unlucky guy of all time. But as a team, your luck's going to turn around if you keep hitting the ball hard. And I think A&M, again, for the last 10 days or so, really since that Rice game, they've hit the ball much harder, much more consistently. And so I'm fine where the offense is. They're going to be tested in a big, big way this coming weekend. Alabama is red hot. They've got 2 of the best hitters currently in the SEC. Their shortstop, Justin LeBron, leads the SEC in homers. They're a real offense. And so A&M's not only going to need to pitch it well, like with Prager, like you mentioned, but they're also probably going to need to score some runs because when you look at just what Bama has done and done against pretty good teams so far, they may run into a few crooked numbers, and the offense is going to have to keep pace against an Alabama pitching staff that, in terms of arm talent, is going to be the best that Texas A&M has seen. They're Riley Quick, one of their starters, been at the 98 miles an hour with a 92 mile an hour slider. He's got real stuff.
Also, Jace, 1 home run away from tying, 2 away from being the all-time home run leader. What are you seeing from his at-bats?
Well, this is going to be a point of contention. Apparently, people on the message board don't like when I say that I think Jace has been pretty good.
Yeah.
All they see is his average. What I see is how Jace is impacting the ball, the direction in which he's impacting the ball. And there's a real world where Jace has already broken Dalen Holt's record by a lot. And if that would have happened, it didn't because of the win and the way where he hit some balls right into the teeth of it. But if his expected batting average on ball and play matched his was what his real batting average was, nobody would be saying, "Oh, Jace is slumping." I think when Jace slumps, like really slumps, it looks way different than what we've seen over the past week. Way, way different. When Jace slumps, you have a lot of chase, a lot of swing and miss. You have ground balls to the pull side. You have a lot of foul balls flared the other way. That is Jace not going well. When Jace is going really well, he hits the ball in the barrel. Sometimes he hits it really high, yes. But that's kind of Jace's natural arc of his swing. He's going to hit balls in the air. And because he's so big and strong that when he hits balls in the air, a lot of times they blow out of the ballpark.
Right.
So I think I've really liked Jace's at-bats, and I think Jace is in a good spot mentally. You just talk to Jace, and he's like, yeah, sometimes baseball stinks. And that's kind of how he's processed that, and that continues to show his maturity. But when he's going well, he's impacting the baseball, hitting it hard, and he's also taking his walks. Two things that I think we've seen him do over the last, week and a half.
On Friday, we'll get more into this, but I just want you for a moment, let your mind see A&M winning a series against Alabama this weekend. What that does perception-wise, not that perception matters, but maybe in the players' minds it matters. I don't know. What does a win over Alabama, a series win over Alabama, do perception-wise in that locker room and beyond?
Well, I think there's a lot of folks around the national media circuit that are viewing A&M as an unknown, and I think that's fair because of what the record says, what that really first, after the Elon series, that next week and a half was really poor.
Yeah.
Really, really poor. And they're trying to figure out what to make of this A&M team without Grahovic and without Sorrell now looking like for another 3 weeks. And so there are questions about what this A&M team will be halfway through the season, because that's whenever you get Sorrell back, that's about where you're going to be, is he's going to miss the first half of the season. So I do think that those questions are fair. I just think if you've watched every game, it's unquestionable that they're playing a better brand of baseball. Now, will that be good enough to beat Alabama this weekend? We'll have to see. But if you're optimistic and you're a glass half full kind of guy or fan, what you're going to say is they've got really good starting pitching. And if that continues, if their form continues, they're going to remain in every single series every weekend. And number two, the offense is starting to turn the corner, and they're starting to get settled in some positions. And they moved TK up to the 5-hole. Gavin Cash has started to turn around. Schott had 2 hits last night. There's some things that are going in the right direction for the offense that makes you go, okay, is the last 10 days what this team is and what they can be going forward, or is it the previous 10?
Right. I should have asked you this earlier, but you kind of touched on it there. Caden, it's going to be at least a couple series.
Yeah, and Coach Early confirmed it last night after the game with the media. Looking like three more weeks, so you're looking at Kentucky or Tennessee. This is not an official word, but I just talked to enough people that have dealt with hamstrings. I've dealt with them in college. There are some things you can do maybe that you can get back sooner. Maybe he goes and gets a second opinion on it, and hey, we actually think that you're closer than 3 weeks. So, but with Coach Early coming out and saying 3 weeks, I would be looking toward Kentucky, Tennessee, that area for his return. And the Aggies, with the way TK swinging the bat, and Jamal George didn't have a hit last night, but man, he had some good at bats, some really good swings. It was unfortunate. They're playing those guys. The more they play, the more confident they get, the more comfortable they get. But still, when you add Sorrell back into the order, it provides another real left-handed bat in there, and a guy with experience not only in the SEC but in the postseason. It'd be a massive boost if they can get him back.
All right, thank you, Bronny. Yep. Talking Milliken Reserve, they have some awesome real estate neighborhoods there. They're nothing like your typical subdivisions. They're based entirely in the Brazos Valley landscape and heritage, closely linked to the land with deep Texas roots. There is no place like Milliken Reserve, a couple of communities that you can find when you go there. You have the Creek, homes on 10-plus acre wooded estates. You've got the Hollow, homes in a private and gated community. You've got the Meadows, homes that are responsive to their natural surroundings. Again, they are rooted in Texas soil. If that sounds like a place you've been looking for, check it out at millikenreserve.com. Remember, their mission is to build a healthy community around nature. You can learn more at millikenreserve.com. That website, again, millikenreserve.com. We're back here on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Let's go to the Bumpy's Catering Hotline. That's where we find D1Baseball's Kendall Rogers here on the program. Kendall, good morning, buddy.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. So just kind of want to get your take on A&M now, because I think there was the preseason hype. There was the initial shock of the way the season started and the injuries. And now it feels like they're trending in the right direction, maybe not to the direction that everybody wanted before the season. So just kind of give me your take on where things stand right now with the first SEC series against Bama this weekend.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we're in a situation to where you're going into conference play, and I still have pretty much zero clue like what conclusions to draw from this team. And I guess that's a good thing, because you don't want the conclusion to be that they're going to underachieve for the whole season. But I just think when you look at this team as a whole, I do feel like they're playing better. I mean, if you look at what they've done defensively over the last few games, I think they've made some right personnel moves in terms of moving guys around, kind of solidifying a little bit the first base position. So, anytime you're playing better defense, you're still pitching at a high level. That gives you a chance to win a lot of games in that league. And so those are the positives. I mean, offensively, they certainly, the last 4 games, they've done a really nice job. I know a lot of people are going to point to the Sunday game against New Mexico State as a reason why there's still some concern. But, I think that's twofold. I think, one, obviously, they had a lot of hard-hit balls in that game. And also give credit to, I'm trying to remember the kid's last name, the kid that came in from New Mexico State at the end, kind of husky guy. He had a really good breaking ball. So, we'll find out a lot more about this team this weekend. I do think when you look at the projected weather with, warm south wind going straight up the left and straight up the left center field, I think this weekend will kind of tell us what we're going to see from this team moving forward. But I would argue that this is a really big weekend for A&M. You have a chance now against Alabama to essentially, I would say wash away, because you put yourself in a hole RPI-wise, but essentially wash away what we all kind of thought about this team the first 3 weeks of the season or first 4 weeks of the season. And they have a chance to kind of turn the tide both, production-wise and perceptionally.
Well, I was going to say, not that it's unfair, because there was a lot of preseason hype for a reason, right? They brought in a huge nucleus of players who were knocking on the door of a national championship. But I almost feel like it's like without Sorrell back, and look, it's going to be a while till we see him again. Like, it's not the team that we thought. So, like, you have a lot of young players and new players trying to figure out their way with a coach who's trying to figure out his way, in his first stop.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting dynamic. The good thing for them is at least one of those pieces in Terrence Kill the second. I mean, you've got a guy who, has made a really quick transition. And I think it's really interesting. I think it might have even been Richard last night. I can't remember who it was, but somebody posted a video of one of TK's interviews from after last night's game. They kind of asked him, like, did you expect this? Most kids are going to be like, well, I expect I expect everything that I do. Well, he was kind of like, honestly, like, I did not expect to be like this productive this early in his career. But, that's been huge for them. I think when you look at all the injuries, having a guy step up like that is big. Sawyer Forrest probably been thrust in the mix a little bit sooner than he would have thought. And so I think it's going to pay off for them down the road. But I do strongly believe that if this team is going to put together a good conference record, they're going to put together a run to potentially a national championship, Sorrell has to be back in the lineup and healthy, and I think Josh Stewart has to be back in the bullpen and healthy. If those two things do not happen, I think it's a tough road to hoe when you look at Tennessee, LSU, Georgia, etc.
All right, let's say those two things do happen. Then can we start talking about that team, maybe not as the preseason hype, but as, okay, they're healthy, they're ready to roll?
At that point, they would have no excuse. At that point, there's not ever an excuse, but at that point, they're a fully loaded team outside of Grahovic. And so, at that point, the expectation would absolutely go back to being that. Because you would have the lineup solidified. Sorrell coming back, honestly, to me, kind of smooths things over defensively across the board. And then Stewart on the back end, I just think when you look at him last year, and you look at just how explosive his slider was and, how good his fastball was in some big situations. It's just such a rock guy to have back there. Not only that, but just a hard-nosed guy. And so, yeah, I would say if those two guys come back healthy, there's no reason why that expectation level should be any different than it was going into the season. That's not downplaying Grahovic. I mean, you're talking about the reigning SEC freshman of the year. But at that point, I mean, you should be able to overcome the loss of one guy. What the problem you run into the SEC is, right now you're trying to overcome the loss of him. You're trying to overcome the loss of a guy that I thought would be an All-American this year in Sorrell. And then you're trying to overcome the loss of a guy like Josh Stewart, who we discussed as an All-American reliever. Those are tough holes to fill, especially when, some of these, the guys like, Jace and whatnot haven't gotten off to the start they kind of wanted to.
How about the 5 straight games without an error? It's more than a step in the right direction. Hopefully they can continue doing that. But after all the mistakes that we saw early on in those close games, they've at least cleaned that up for the last 5.
And that's big. Again, I think I've said this before, but I mean, in college baseball, if you can play defense and you can pitch, you got a shot to win every game you play. And so I think defensively they've obviously improved. Again, I think some personnel moves. I think really solidifying first base is crucial. I mean, I always think back to LSU 2 years ago when they won the national championship, and Trey Morgan at first base. I mean, Trey Morgan literally probably won them the national championship that year with his defense, and so I think that's such an important position defensively. I think pitching wise, especially from the starting rotation standpoint. My expectations haven't changed. This is a national championship caliber starting rotation. If anything, Miles Patton has far exceeded expectations for me. Prager obviously has been awesome. And then Justin Lampkin, I go back to Omaha last year. I really felt like Justin for much of last year pitched a little timid. Like it felt like he was good, but it felt like he was a little bit nervous. And I felt like his start in Omaha last year, he grew up a lot, and he just continued to build off that.
Talking to Kendall Rogers here on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. All right, so talk to me about Bama. I know they're good. What makes them so dangerous?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is just the key components in their lineup. I mean, if you go up and down Bama's lineup, and granted they haven't played an awesome schedule, but guess what? Neither has A&M. If you look at Will Hodo hitting over 400 with some power. You look at Cade Snell, a senior for them. This team is like senior after senior after senior. But Cade Snell, power guy, hitting over 400. Jason Torres, Miami transfer, has gotten off to a nice start. Then Justin LeBron. I think really the key to the weekend for A&M is you cannot let Justin LeBron get hot. When you look at this guy, I mean, 11 homers, 43 RBIs. It's kind of mind-blowing because, I mean, you'll watch him at BP and you'll watch him in person, and you're like, wait, how in the world does this guy have 11 homers? He's kind of a string bean, physical stature, but man, he's got an electric bat and he's hitting 380 with a 1.433 OPS. So on paper, especially given the way the weather is going to be this weekend, Bama looks very dangerous offensively. Pitching-wise, Riley Quick has taken a step forward for them this year. They've got some solid arms. But again, I think just keeping the top of that lineup from getting on a roll in these elements is going to be crucial. And honestly, I feel like A&M's pitching, at least on the starting side, really matches up well with them. I think if you're Bama, not to give the tricks of the trade here, but I think if you're Bama, I think your goal is to get, Prager, Lampkin, Patton's pitch counts up and force A&M's bullpen to make key outs in the last 3 innings, because I feel okay about the bullpen. I do not feel great about the bullpen without Stewart back there.
Yeah, and waiting for Stewart again, there's so many parts of this because we want to see what it was going to look like. But regardless, Jace being so close to the record, 2 away from breaking it, 1 away from tying it. Just even though the start of the season numbers-wise aren't where he wanted it to be, Ronnie mentioned in the last segment, he's hitting the ball well. He's just been very unlucky. So let's talk about him and how close to that record. See it here maybe this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty incredible run by him. He's really grown a lot as a player, and I get that he got off to a slow start, but you go from what he was his freshman year to what he did last year as a sophomore. And, there's a lot of season to be played here. I think Early might have said this the other day, but, when you're hitting the ball like some of these guys are, including him, eventually they're going to fall. And I think for him, this weekend in conference play is big. I mean, again, kind of like the rest of this team. I mean, he's got a chance if he has a big weekend to where, if you go out there and have a big weekend against Alabama, literally no one, including scouts, care what you did against Cal Poly or what you did, against New Mexico State. They just don't. So, when you look at him just overall, are there concerns in the scouting community about him a little bit? Slightly, but again, he has a chance to kind of turn the tide in terms of what people think about him.
Kendall, I'll close with the same question I closed with Bronny earlier. Let's say A&M wins this weekend, the series. They win 2 of 3 against Bama. How does that change kind of the perception of the program for this season?
Well, I think, honestly, for me, I think it changes the way this team views themselves. I don't think this is a team, and you tell me if you disagree, but I don't think this is a team when we saw them in Houston the first 2 games, or we saw them, the first couple of weekends. This is not a team that I even thought that they were really good. That didn't look like a team that thought, hey, we're a really good baseball team, guys. That's not what I thought. So I think it's both big perception-wise nationally, but I think it's also really big for them as a team to go, if they go out this weekend and take care of business, go, hey, this is who we are. We are a really good baseball team.
Kendall, great stuff, buddy. Thanks so much for your time.
Man, we'll see you this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Kendall Rogers, D1Baseball on the Buppies Catering Hotline. We'll hit a break here. We'll come back with a very short final segment. As a reminder, the final segment of the program is brought to you by Double Dave's, and that's the next segment. Right now, caller number 12, 979-693-1150. We're going to hook you up with your choice of a dozen pepperoni rolls or a large one-topping pizza from Double Dave's. They've been around since 1984 here in Aggie Land with your favorite pizza and, of course, those world-famous pepperoni rolls. Reliable in-house delivery, bringing piping hot goodness straight to your door. Just click on doubledaves.com, and your favorites are on their way. All right, final couple of minutes of the program. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Tomorrow on the program, OB will be calling in the show. We're on Zooming in from Nashville. He's going with Luke, so we'll have both of them on the show at some point tomorrow. We'll have Michael Early on the show as well. Richard Zane will join me for that. But another thing about college basketball, Callie got us David Cobb, CBS Sports main basketball writer. So we'll talk March Madness. We'll get a feel for his take on the Aggies, what they can do in Nashville, and what they can do beyond. And, of course, all of the things happening beyond that. Logan Lee will stop by, as he normally does, at 10 a.m. and the Fan Show. I think today's show, a couple things happened. People are not completely sure where they stand on Aggie baseball. I think that's fair. People are not completely sure where they stand with the Aggie football team this upcoming year, because we know what the standard should be and what the expectation should be, but I don't know if people are ready to go that far yet, because, again, we have to see it consistently. And when we see it consistently, breaking through in one season doesn't necessarily mean breaking through. Breaking through, to me, means multiple years where you're knocking on the door of the playoffs or in the playoffs. That's breaking through. 1 year followed by 3 mediocre is not breaking through. And that's the step. Like, they got to take a step from where they are right now, and then they got to take another step and do that consistently. That's what we expect from it. All right, that's going to do it for TexAgs Live on a Wednesday. My thanks to all of our great guests. Tom Schuberth was awesome. It was also fun to get Brauninger on, and Kendall Rogers, and Trisha Ford, and John Harris. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We will see you mañana.